Today is August 25th. Welcome to Native Calgarian. Oki nagana go mekoche chestokom aki or de gots negotine siku. My name is Red Thunder Woman. My married English name is Michelle Robinson, and I use she and her pronouns. I'm speaking to you on the lands of the Niitsitapi, which is the Blackfoot Confederacy. The Blackfoot south of the imposed U.S.-Canadian border are the Blackfeet, and north of the border are the Siksika, Gunai, and Bagani of the Confederacy. These lands are Treaty 7, signed September the 22nd, 1877, with signatures that include the Stoney and the Dene from Tsuut'ina. I acknowledge all First Nations, Métis, Inuit, status, and non-status across our partners with the government signing on your behalf. It's really important to acknowledge that the straight agenda and gendered violence was and is forced on this land by Christian outsiders. Land acknowledgements are critical for creating a safer space for Indigenous, as well as honoring the host as the guest and acknowledging your role as a treaty partner in a so-called time of reconciliation. It's important that land acknowledgements have meaning. I encourage all folks to introduce themselves with acknowledgement of their ancestors, stories of displacement, how you perceive your role as a treaty partner, a citizen of Canada, a refugee, or other land displacement, so we as Indigenous people know how safe you are to be around. If you don't know how to pronounce your local Indigenous nation's name, won't say your pronouns, won't say your story of origin, won't acknowledge stolen lands, won't acknowledge imposed economic oppression or your role in reconciliation, I determine how safe you are to be around my community, my family, and myself. Understanding land acknowledgements and their importance is Indigenous 101 because it immediately addresses colonialism, oppression dynamics, broken treaties, and lies taught today in Canadian schools nationally. That's why settlers and those who call themselves Native Calgarians, or whatever town you're from, show me that you have no Indigenous 101. Jesse Wente's book, Unreconciled, chapters 13 and pages 180 and 181 explain it perfectly if you are confused. I was recently at an event, and the MP, the MLA, and the city councillor were all acknowledged, but the person who came out to do the land acknowledgement wasn't. So that just showed me that this community association had no concept whatsoever of the importance of land acknowledgements, and that it should be going in that order of land acknowledgement, understanding your role to the Treaty 7, thanking them, thanking your MLA, thanking your MPs, and so on and so forth. Anyway, my Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Great Bear Lake tribe in Treaty 11. My people wore rabbit skin, so we've been referred to the land of the Hare people. I'm a native to Turtle Island, and my Dene nation is a visitor to this area of Pincho Tine Indahe in Satu Dene, meaning mini big dog town, named after the Calgary Stampede. I was born in Calgary, or Blackfoot Mokistis, as Michelle Elliott, an English name which has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. My mother is Northern Slavey Dene, or Satu Dene, but my Indian Act imposed status card by the Canadian government says Yellowknives Dene. Through my father, I am a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution, while having an Indian Act imposed status card by the Canadian government. That's a colonial construct by Canadian policies meant to divide Indigenous peoples' inherent rights. Indigenous Two-Spirit, or the Indigenous 2S LGBTQ plus community, and Indigenous women are at the bottom of the socio-economic ladder because of colonial trauma, imposed poverty, racism, gendered violence, and land theft by Canada. As a Dene woman who attempted to run after those joining harmful colonial parties, spending money to be at expensive conventions, leaving my home to travel to them, just to vote on incomplete policies that still allow incarceration and denial of justice, denial of health services, racism, colonial trauma, and genocide of Indigenous and Black peoples, I have work to continue to do, reports to advocate for, and attempt to work within these systems meant to harm me and my community. I can't say have a great pride when I know my community is dying from current drug policies, systems of imposed Christian-based drug policies, abstinence program, private healthcare, justice systems built on racism, land theft, and imposed British constructs that continue genocide on Indigenous peoples. There's so many folks that we have to honor every single day. Every single day, there's somebody new in the news that we have to honor. Now there's a new man from Winnipeg that was in Vancouver for 5 minutes, and the police just killed him. You know, these are the people I want to honor every day. I want you to see your role in the importance of stopping harm as a citizen and see your role in reconciliation. I honor the Blackfoot as the elders and members have been kind to me on my Red Road journey. Elder Red Crane taught me how to pronounce my spirit name in Blackfoot, and Leonard Kenny taught me how to pronounce my spirit name in Satu Dene. My humblest apologies to the Blackfoot and Dene elders, language keepers, as I try to learn proper pronunciation. Any mistakes or misinterpretations about the whole podcast will be on me. I encourage questions so that misunderstandings can be cleared up as soon as possible. I do not speak on behalf of all Indigenous. I just share my journey as I walk the red road. Been accused of not being kind while surviving genocide. And I've given free book clubs, podcasts, and info on my social media for years, as have many others. So at this point, it's just willful to be ignorant on these issues. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you to previous donors for showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. For those who cannot afford to give, love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or your questions. Also, giving a review helps on whatever medium you're listening from. I have a YouTube channel where you can go and subscribe. Go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. Well, I'm super excited because I have two of my friends here on Native Calgarian, returning guests. So, would you like to introduce yourself first, Autumn, and then Melrene?
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Good morning. Hello, everyone. Nidanakawa Utskui Biksaki. Hi, everybody. My name is Bluebird Woman. My English colonial name that was given to me is Autumn Eagle Speaker. My traditional name was given to me by my grandmother, the late Leona Eagle Speaker. My sister and I are from the Gaina First Nation, or the Blood Tribe, which is approximately 2.5 hours south of Calgary. Today, I join you from the outside lands of the Piikani Nation, where I am married into. And I am I call myself a Renaissance woman because I do a little bit of this, I do a little bit of that. A lot of activism, community engagement, community work, and have just been around the Calgary community, Aboriginal community, Indigenous community, for well over 25 years, volunteering and just being part of things. And in my other time, I am a returning full-time student, a mother of 6, and a junior entrepreneur because I am a slow artist. I'll let my sister go.
Beautiful.
I love that. So does that make me a fast artist?
Yes, that makes you a machine.
That's so funny. So I'm Melrene Saloy Eagle Speaker. I reside here in Mohkinstsis. Like Autumn said, we're from Gaina, which is a blood tribe from southern Alberta. Pardon my little chihuahuas, they're jumping all over me. I am a mother of 2. I am a entrepreneur, or a fast artist, as Autumn says. I make First Nations beaded jewelry and accessories. My business is Native Diva Creations, and I've been doing that for 7 years. And together, me and Autumn do the Authentically Indigenous Craft Show and Marketplace here in Mohkinstsis for the last almost 7 years now. And we've been doing some amazing things to help other entrepreneurs on their small journeys and trying to help them and give them space. So that's kind of our joint venture together.
Yeah. Awesome. One of the things I've been wanting to talk to you about, because Autumn, once upon a time, you were a liberal, and right now it's policy. And the thing that upsets me the most is non-Indigenous people somehow saying they have authentic Indigenous art, and it's half the time made in China. And it really upsets me, but obviously it probably upsets you a little more.
Yeah.
Both of you.
Well, I mean, that's really the foundation of our show, actually. I mean, my sister and we come from a long line of crafters and artists, and we've always gone to a lot of different craft events to support and to go to different markets and see. And we went to one of the large markets in Calgary, and there was like hundreds and hundreds of booths, and one First Nations ish booth, and it was again stuff made in China, and it was sold by, I think it was like a Chinese guy with a ponytail, who was selling authentic Indigenous goods, and it's like, this is so wrong. And then just the cost to be able to participate in these large markets was just like astronomical. And so at the time, my sister was just beginning in her entrepreneurial journey as an artist and as a business. And so we took both of our combined skills, because part of the other things I do is some event planning. I've planned the University of Calgary's Aboriginal graduation powwow. I did it for 13 years prior to COVID. So we combined our knowledge and efforts and skills to create the very first authentically Indigenous craft market, which took place in the holiday season of 2015. And that was the idea to make sure that we were giving space to Indigenous artists to come and sell their goods, but also making sure that we weren't trying to profit off of them. Yes. That's one of the big things that we've done from the beginning, is ensure that the market is very affordable to everybody from all walks of life. So if you're just a slow artist like me, or somebody who knits, just makes a few things, or someone who's an amazing fast artist and has a huge business, we want to create opportunity for everybody to have that space.
Who
And
is
so that is
actually
the foundation
Indigenous?
of our division.
100% Indigenous run, Indigenous led, and Indigenous artists are being promoted and showcased, right? So like my sister said, in the beginning years of my business, I was going to these markets, and me setting up, I'm like, it's $1,500 for me to be here for 2 days, or it's like $900 for a day. And I'm like, how is anybody affording this? And then I'm going and I'm like, okay, I just barely made it to get in here. Why aren't there any other Indigenous artists? I could have named like 20. I'm like, I know so many. Where are people? And really seeing the barriers firsthand, what artists are going through. The struggling artist is real. It's a very much a real thing. And, never mind just the venue, being there all day, having food. If you have children, can you bring them with you? Do you have to find childcare? So that 900 to 1,500 easily turns into a couple grand, like in a few seconds. And that's if you make that back. So it's such a gamble, such a risk. And we wanted to make sure that there was accessibility for artists to have a showcase and promotion, and were able to sell their goods, and they were able to make 100% of their profit. So like Autumn said, we've made it very, very low cost because we want that accessibility. And with us having that low price, we have so many, like a huge variety of artists. Because we have that low price, it makes it easier for artists to come in that, like Autumn said, that just have a few things. And like they might sell one thing, it covers their table, and anything else is profit. And they're able to make the network of community as well. And it's so important for artists to have that network and make sure that they can connect with other artists and learn from each other. And like I have such a huge vendor family is what I call it. And we share information and other shows, and this is working for me, or how do you take transactions, and do you use this, do you use that, and really making that knowledge shared. Because again, another large barrier is going to these large organizations and looking for funding, looking for grant writing, all those little things that go into starting a business are really, really hard to access. And so being authentic is 100% what we're all about.
And I'm just gonna say, like, you bent over backwards to let me be at one of your craft stores too, one of the shows, and you gave me a small table to try to promote Native Calgarian, because to me it's about trying to talk about what's going on locally, but it's also about connecting with a lot of the local artists that you're talking about. We want to showcase it. Like, you're going to like Milan, darling, and New York and all of these places. And I'm like, what is going on? And I'm really, really happy. CBC actually did a showcase on some of the incredible places that you're going, as rightfully so. Like you and many folks here are like international artists, and I don't think it gets praised enough. And if you were white, man, I think you'd have a freaking bridge named after you. Maybe a statue could go up.
For sure. Yeah, no, I'm excited. It was a great interview and stuff to do. And I was really happy to promote, what my business has been able to accomplish over the last couple of years. I mean, I've been able to do some amazing things and really check off those big buckets, on my bucket list, and, kind of take my stuff international and mainstream. And I really want to help open those doors, because There aren't any really right now. And, a lot of us local artists here in Mohkinstsis are doing some amazing things and we're able to do that. So, we want to bring everybody along with us. And our show helps do that as well. Like it
Yeah.
really, really does. Because people are able to see what other artists are doing and what they can also do if they try to. That it's believable, it's realistic.
How do we start tackling the fact that there's so many non-Indigenous people trying to profit off of the term Indigenous, and yet, so they got stolen land, economic, um, leg up, all of these things. Now they don't have the intergenerational trauma imposed on Indigenous people, but yet they somehow get away with calling themselves Indigenous, art or selling Indigenous art. Like, how do we even start tackling this? Because I know in the States they have a bill that kind of prevents it, but I don't know how effective it is. And I mean, the laws in the States are just different than Canada.
Yeah. I think, I think also internationally, I feel like New Zealand, Australia may have similar laws and policies around labeling of Indigenous work or Aboriginal work. And I think that's really a good place to maybe, start from the government perspective. To take that initiative to say that, yes, we support our Indigenous people, our Indigenous artists by ensuring the protection of their work, their copyright, and their trade, and ensuring that, people aren't able to easily access these government dollars that are supposed to go to support Indigenous artists and organizations. And then that's the problem, is that there, are some little loopholes that exist that people find out and monopolize, in the system. And it's unfortunate that happens, and I'm sure that it happens in many different cases. But I mean, it goes into that whole idea of Indigenous 101. It's asking those questions to understand the organization. Who is the organization? Who are the people that are the board of directors? Who are the people that are running the organization, and what is their intention? If you're working with a group of people that are saying that they want to promote you and give you space, by just giving you, what was the word, Mel? It's not paying you, it's
Oh,
Promotion.
it's just promoting.
promotion.
I think they
It's
just was
just
promoting.
promotion.
Just
Yeah.
promoting.
So if you're an artist or a musician and they're telling you that instead of paying you for your work, that they'll just give you all of this wonderful promotion that you
And
can also
time.
help, and time that you can help pay for as well. That, that this is not a good bargain, and that these people are not working in your best interest.
Once upon a time, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, in 2000, I guess 13, when I had a small position here. I was trying to do an art show for June, and I had this white woman, well known in our community. She comes up to me and she wants to, for me to organize a fashion show for her and her kids. And then I found out everything felt wrong. There was nothing that felt good. And then I found out later she exploits Indigenous girls' art, doesn't even give it back to them, uses it in order to get grant money. And because she's well known, she's white, and as you know, getting grant money in Calgary, Alberta means whose ass are you licking in order to get that money? You don't get money. So like this podcast, I've never received any funding from any order of government. And in a way, I'm kind of proud to, because then I don't have to say, Canada has been so good on reconciliation. And ironically, I'm a Liberal Party person. So I, out of all people, should be saying, and we did this and we did this. And come election time, I probably will, if Pierre Poilievre gets in. But I mean, I can be open and honest about the politics of trying to get money, and it's not fun. And I would argue it's not even ethical. Like, getting Shell money, getting Suncor money, any major company that has literally been guilty of exploiting Indigenous women and lands and not sharing the profit, like, yeah, we can access that money, but I'm not going to say Shell is a great company.
Mm-hmm.
Just not. I can't do it. So even I struggle with the Western economics of even running this podcast, because I don't want to I don't want to become dirty and say, oh, this or this, but like lots of times when you guys are running your shows, I try to do a plug on the podcast in case there's some
Mhm.
folks listening, because I know a lot of non-Indigenous listen, and that's the only time they hear about it. But they don't share my social media. There's like all these different pockets. Like the people on Twitter are different from the people on Facebook,
Oh
which
yeah.
are different on Instagram, which are different on TikTok, which are different than the downloads on the podcast. So it's really weird, and I don't know how to do all of this. And I'm trying to do stupid lives on TikTok, and I don't even know why. I just start doing dishes, and then I'm like, nobody's engaging, so that's enough of that.
Well, I can't. I was just gonna say something now. Damn it, I forgot. Um, oh, I was gonna say financially with this market that we put on, like we are not raking in the thousands of dollars and making profits. Like it is essentially a community give back. Like it is a form of
Mhm.
community service that we do to help the Indigenous community in Calgary and help Indigenous entrepreneurs. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, the table market fee that we ask for people, which I'm just gonna say, it's under $100, and we also have elder fees. And so, we keep it very, very minimal just to ensure that the building is paid for,
Mhm.
essentially. And it's not about making profit. It's about ensuring that it's a space created for community. It's a space
Mhm.
for artists to grow and to network and to learn. And it's something, we've been able to also create a younger generation of entrepreneurs through our own children. My sister's daughter, Athena, she can speak to it, creates her own jewelry and sells it at the market. My children
Mhm.
in the past have worked in their own booths selling plants, whatever,
Mhm.
candy, but they've also worked at the canteen and learned those valuable skills of how to interact and do customer service. And so there's so many different skills that are going on at the market that people can learn and participate in. And just recently, in the last few years, we've been lucky to have like some volunteers from the community come out to support us in this endeavor and just volunteer their time. And what's so great is that we offer time slots, and then normally people just stay for the whole day
All
or
day. Yeah,
just
they're like an
come
hour's
back
not
just
good
to
enough.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're like, we knew there was a market. We thought you might need help, so we just came by,
Yeah.
and I think that's just like the most fabulous thing, because it's other people too that see that value and that importance of, just donating to ensure that, our community has gathering space, because, you know very well in Mohkinstsis that really is something that does not exist. There's
No,
no.
and honestly, we have to, I think urban Indigenous um, itself is a whole topic. And
Yeah.
then
Oh
trying to
yeah.
create community within, and then
Yeah.
trying to authenticate who is actually Indigenous. Because,
Mhm.
like, I show my status card openly and freely, but conversely, my daughter who doesn't have her status yet, like that's a really big milestone for her, is to want to have that stupid card. And I'm like, but it's a
Mhm.
colonial construct. It's to separate you from your inherent rights. And I'm just trying to
Mhm.
tell her it's not that important, but it is important to her. And at the end
Yeah.
of the day, we've seen enough frauds that it's like, okay, well, I think it's important if you can get it. But how do you navigate that where folks like are how do you prove indigeneity? And I only ask this because um, so many folks want to claim Indigenous status in some capacity, and I just like your take on it.
I have 2 points. One, I'm going to go back to what you just said about the status card and about Samantha. And remember that she's young and impressionable and will learn, I mean, I was a liberal once. So I'll just say that. Okay. And now I am non-card carrying anything. I'm just open to criticizing everybody. So
Which is
anyway,
good because, like,
um,
I'm helping an NDP or provincially because I just hate Jason Kenney and those freaking blue teams so much for
yeah.
everything they do. And I could list that, but please continue.
I mean, I do donate orange. I will say that though, because I believe in the same thing.
Sure.
And you help where you can. I think too about proving indigeneities, because we do have, you know, it is unfortunate in our community is that it's become ugly and taboo to ask people where you're from and who your relations are, because you have a lot of pretendians who go lateral violence as soon as that comes out, like, how dare you question my indigeneity. But it's so strange because in our community and the way that I was raised and around everywhere, you say,
Hmm.
where are you from? Who are your parents? Who are your grandparents? What's your clan? Because then that roots you with who you are and who your people are and what your land is and who your clan system is. And most people are able to state that, and if for some reason that they're not, because of 60 scoop or some other reason, I mean, there's valid reasons for that. But I mean, there are some people that, look at indigenous people or indigenous systems, and they see dollar signs, and then become like White Owl and invent these, made up personalities or this made up lineage to uh, create some story, to justify that they're, great, 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 great grandmother, may have smudged with somebody way back when. I If you have to go like 8 generations back, like that's pretty far back. I mean, I can go 4 generations back, and I'm not claiming my Frenchness or my Irishness or trying to reclaim that heritage. Maybe more Native people should, and then all the white people will get angry at us and not try to do it anymore. But no, but again, it's having just asking people like where they're from. And if you have a status card, then it shouldn't be a hard thing to to show that. And I'm having a hard time because I know people there are people that exist that are running organizations that have no Indigenous blood in them, who again exploit artists and take their work and use it in production, on large scale, and make money off of it and don't give any money back to the artists. And
Yeah.
it's sickening.
Yeah.
And it's been
It's
happening
so
in our community
frustrating.
for so long.
So frustrating. And the thing is, like, a lot of artists just aren't even, excuse me, are aware a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Because when you're that struggling artist, you're like, someone's going to give me space, someone's going to give me time. I don't have money to pay for stuff. You just take it because you're unaware. And that gullibility and that vulnerability can be so taken advantage of. And, we're
Yeah.
witnessing right now that that's really, really happening in front of our faces. And we're doing everything we can in our power as Indigenous people in our community that run events, that we people trust that what we have to say is authentic, and they know that we have their back and their best interest at heart. And it's been rough to see. And to your point on proving their indigeneity, as far as like our event is concerned, we do have in our application like check boxes, where you are on there at all. And there's a lot of people that are that were 60 scoop and stuff that are trying to figure out their identities, and they don't have that little piece of card to say I'm 100% this, right? And it's not as important as some people think. But in certain communities, it's the only step of approval. We don't ask for proof that way. We just want to ask where you're from, so that way we're making sure we're also promoting authentic, and that we don't want to say we're authentic and then we're not. We want to make sure that what we're saying is true. And going to other events and conferences, trade shows, other things, events, powwows, and the many, many artists that are non-Indigenous sell Indigenous-like things, or things that are from South America that look First Nations Canadian, is huge. And they make extreme profit margins. And they're taking that away from the authentic artists that are either local or anywhere that they're from. Wherever they go, they're taking that space. So we want to make sure we're giving that space appropriately to those people that deserve it.
When I'm at Banff, when I'm
Yeah.
here locally at some of the, not dollar stores, but like tourist booths,
Oh
and I
yeah.
see all this made in Canada, authentic Indigenous stuff, like it drives me wild when I think about the Stampede, the amount of times that you see these fake made in China dream catchers, and that's not even our teaching out here for that matter. Like all of these things just upset me so much, and there's nothing I can do about it yet. But I got to try to see if we can pass a stupid policy, but framing it is going to be one of the harder ones, because the way the stupid Indian Act works is that if you're a man and you marry some white woman and she, exploits every single thing from our culture and takes every single little bit of knowledge and then makes all of this stuff and starts selling it, then here we have a person who, yeah, it's authentic indigenous art, but she's white, I've seen many of these now. And I just don't even know what to do about that, because it's not like they're teaching kids, and they're just literally making profit. And I really struggle with that, because just because she has a status doesn't mean that it's authentic, because she has no blood in her. And the only reason why she is a part of the community is because of marriage.
True. Well, a lot of our artists, like all of our work, like me especially too, like all of my work comes from lineage. Like a lot of colors, patterns, different textiles, ways of working comes from generational. Like I've learned from other family members. Of course, I've self-taught myself a lot of things, but of doing things appropriately. What can I sell? What I can't sell? Is this appropriate or not? I still, Auntie, can I still do this? Is this okay? Like I'm still making sure that I'm doing those things. And those things are coming from my family line. Like paintings and art that our grandfather used to make, I use as inspiration sometimes. But that's all lineage. And that's where a lot of the authenticity is coming from. It's not just something I saw, so I'm going to replicate and, it looks cool. And, a lot of the times it's just me inspired by something. And like powwows are huge inspirations for me, going to museums to see older things that we don't have on our own lands anymore. It's unfortunate, but sometimes those are amazing because I get to see things. I'm like, oh my God, like that quill work is beautiful. Or I didn't think about using those color combinations and, things like that, because it brings it back to the lineage and our people, where we come from, and making it new and contemporary. So it's really important that, a lot of the artists, their paintings, their inspiration, it's coming from family lines, it's coming from their clan people, it's coming from their specific land they're from. And that really shows that it's authentic, especially as like a consumer. Like you said, with dream catchers and stuff like that, I get asked all the time, do you make dream catchers? I'm like, no, in Blackfoot, we don't make those. Sorry. I'm like, but I know somebody that's authentic, that will make them, that has the teachings of what they're for and how they're made. And they're not just pretty things they found at Michael's, and they source their things appropriately. And, they have feathers that are on there that, they've found, or that have, been in their family or something like that. And, so I'm making sure that we're passing that appropriate knowledge on of other people that are appropriate. So our show does that. And, people that are in our community that are profiting from us is just despicable. And, it's something that's been happening for a long time, but I feel like we're in a resurgence right now. Like our artists we're really realizing our value to not just our community, but to all peoples. Like all of our peoples is what value we bring, because we're showing our real history. Like there's art that's like beautiful, there's art that's very political, and there's, art that's just, for whatever you want to do with. And because our voices are being heard on a bigger level, we're able to do things like your podcast, or going to CBC, or going to the news and the radio, or even just, doing lives on Facebook, and people are listening and they're like, yes. Everyone else it's funny because we've been doing them and they're like, we know, thank God you're saying something. No one's been listening to me. And, because they feel like their voices aren't being heard. So for us to do something and listen to artists authentically and really taking what they have to say, and as an artist ourselves, we get to see what's happening. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds, is we're doing events for people, but we're also being at these events. So we know how people are affected when, that value is taken away from us.
Yeah.
And it's really important that we're speaking up and we're talking about organizations or people that are finding loopholes, that are finding ways of profitability on us, taking away grant money from us, just regular everyday events from us, and making sure that people know about them. And I think the best that we can do and that we have so far is, speaking up. And if people want to listen, great. If they don't, okay too. But artists are then aware, and whatever they do with that information is totally up to them. But then, you've been warned, just be aware, be cautious. I mean, it's a sad thing that even has to happen. but it's been around a long time. But like I said, I think a resurgence is really happening. We're finding our power and we're finding our voices in our artwork and seeing how valuable we can be.
Yeah,
I have a couple points. So we've had to encounter a couple different things. Originally, when we first started, we were just so excited to have any artist
Mhm,
want to come participate, and we didn't originally have the check boxes. We just thought,
mhm,
well, if it's authentically Indigenous, you would know that you need to be Indigenous to be here. So in the first couple of years, we would get requests to come participate in the show from people that were non-Indigenous, and we'd have to ask them, are you Indigenous? Are you First Nations? Da, 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 da. And if they weren't, then we'd have to tell them, I'm sorry, this show is distinctly created by Indigenous people for Indigenous people. But that's not saying we had vendors before originally, again, that were not Native. And then it was like reflection of like, well, if we're authentic, we need to be authentic too. And
mhm,
so these great people that created stuff that was inspired by lovely people. Leather work is one that I can think of off the top of my head. But
mhm.
again, because they weren't Indigenous, they said, you know what? We aren't Indigenous and we recognize that. And so, we are okay with not being in your show after we talk to them,
Mhm.
and so that those kind of people like that hear that and understand that, and they're still doing their thing on their own, and that's okay. But that they see that they're not Indigenous, and they say that too, which is important. They're
Oh
not
yeah.
trying to front it.
Flatline tell you they're like, this is our name. We know we are not Indigenous. We make Indigenous like things for Indigenous people.
Yeah,
A lot of their wares are for Native people, not for non-Indigenous, which is it's kind of nice because they're trying to stay in the community with still
yeah.
being in the community, giving to the community that way too. So yeah.
Yeah. And then sometimes we have encountered people in the past that have married into the communities and stuff. And again, it's having those conversations about, you shouldn't be profiteering off of this work because it doesn't belong to you. Your children, yes, it will belong to your children. If you're making stuff for your kids and you're doing it for your family or you're giving it away, then that's something. But as soon as you're trying to put like cash behind it and like, I recently did, I do some medicine walks sometimes. Again, my family comes from a long line of herbalists, so something that was passed down to me. And on doing this walk, I said, now if I see you setting up a store like Urban Outfitters and
Mhm.
selling wand sticks, then I'm going to come at you because that's not right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what has happened, I noticed this year, is again just the appropriation of teaching and learning. And now that I've taught people, now they're trying to promote that as their own, and making money to teach again. And so it's just another form, in our own communities, and how that works is that, this it's not, you hear a song, you're given a song, you earn these rights, these lessons, these teachings, and you pass them on and you share them, but you're not giving that person that knowledge to do that. You know what I mean? Like, it's like it's a form of payment. And so, it's I was very insulted to see that my family's generations of learning again is just being exploited and profiteered off in a different way by another community member who is Indigenous, but now has just added that to their checklist of events that are services that can be offered. And it's just, you know, it's it's a thing, and I believe that's that colonialism, and that is still just happening and being perpetuated in our community. And the last point I wanted to go into real quick was about that idea about exploiting the artists that just don't know, and that idea that we've had to deal with that for so long with the treaties, of us just not knowing and not understanding. And that free, prior, and informed consent that didn't exist then is also happening today. And so these arts alliance organizations that are being created to create platforms for First Nations artists, um, again, like they're just being created to exploit people. And yeah, all we can do is share what we've been through and what's going on, so that people can make their own informed decision and understand the ramifications, what can happen. Sometimes people get locked into signing things that they have no idea, and so then their artwork all of a sudden becomes trademarked by organizations. And so I think I was going to say a big, huge disclaimer should be organizations that are having large Orange Shirt Day events, like those ones that are trying to, again, profit off of the trauma. And, again, like having originally, after the finding the 215 to cut Kamloops, and having celebrations and events and honorings, but now it's like, people are creating all these orange t-shirts to make money. And, I saw orange t-shirts at Walmart, and where's that money? You know what I mean? So
it says it's 100% proceeds are going to something, but how can you prove such a thing? Really?
Well, and Walmart
is a huge organization,
right?
Huge.
They should be honoring the stupid tax credit if we show up with our status card, and they don't. And I heard, like, I think it was you guys that even said that Canadian Tire Road at West Hills does, but I mean, none of the other ones do. I was in Lethbridge and they wouldn't do it. So it's like, these companies that profit off of Orange Shirt Day, or again, those stupid made in China, authentically indigenous dream catchers and stuff like that. Like, it really upsets me, because these are the people that are literally exploiting our land, our labor, our people, our art. And what do we get in return? Nothing. They have exploited the treaty. And that's why it's like, treaty, thanks the treaty, then you're MLA, then you're MP, then you're councillor. But if you're not thanking treaty people first and foremost, then you don't get this whole concept of this world that we're supposed to live in and what reconciliation is. Holy.
Oh, yeah. Huge. Well, for us, I mean, as our organization, we're always willing to make, sit down, have conversations. We're wanting to make networks and connections and, host other events so that we can make more space for artists. And we were approached as Authentically Indigenous from an organization. And it kind of, I think this really blew our eyes open. Like, we've always known these things are happening, but to hear it come out of people's mouths in front of our faces surprised the heck out of us. And it's an organization that's local, that's doing some Indigenous events. They are having an Orange T-shirt festival as well.
What the hell is an orange? What?
Yeah. And at this festival, you can also meet and greet elders. So they're promoting elders as like they're a trinket of something. Yay! Yeah. So this organization contacted me and said, hey, saw this. I was supposed to set up for them. So I also didn't know who they were. And I pulled out last minute because I had another event happening. I said, thanks so much. Not going to be able to make it. A week later, I get an email saying, hey, saw what you guys do with the community. Love to talk, maybe partner or do something. Sounded great. It's an Indigenous organization, so I thought. And so I told my sister, and like, let's go have lunch with these guys. Let's see what it's all about. Maybe it's something we can market together. Like, we've promoted and done stuff with other organizations. Even if they're not Indigenous, it's not a big deal. And so we go, we sit down. We're both baffled because we look, and they're two very Caucasian retired men. And we're like, what is going on? I was like, are we being pranked? Because that does not seem right. We asked the waiter, we're like, are you sure that's who we're supposed to be meeting? He's like, yeah, these gentlemen over here. And we're like, okay. So we sit down with them, and, not a lot of us, we weren't reciprocating too much. It was very, yes, this kind of, sure, a little kind of not. It was a lot of that. And they were asking us a lot of in-depth questions about our organization personally, what we do, how do we get artists? We've heard about different protocols. What are they? How do you find out what they are? Like, they wanted to know so much details that it's like, if you're Indigenous, these kind of are things you just know. If you're not, we're not going to give it to you. Like,
can I just pause you? I just have had 2 weeks of stress because an organization didn't know to pay their elder on the spot. Yeah. Even it's the Human Rights Board. They put out like this elder protocol thing years ago. Like, how are we still here? How can people even kind of claim they care about reconciliation and not get this? How can we be here? I honestly, I was so angry at so many people at this organization, at all these level of organizations, and they did the same colonial bullshit of Jordan's principles, like, oh, that's not my department. Oh, that's not my department. Oh, I did it.
Oh gosh.
Oh, I need an invoice. Did you tell anybody you needed an invoice? Jesus Christ. So it took like some time, finally got it done, trip out to Siksika and back, and very humble, I'm so sorry on behalf of a shitty organization that should know better.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this is
Well,
real. And I
with
mean,
us
I
working
took
with
it
some
really to heart that this was going to personally ruin my relationship with this
Oh
elder,
yeah.
because
yeah.
I
Yeah.
know protocol and this organization could give a flying fuck. And I was just so angry because I'm like, you're not just disrespecting like this one person, and you're disrespecting the entire community, me, other indigenous people, everybody. You've just disrespected us at a level you can't even
Mm.
comprehend. You don't even care. And so when you tell me that this organization did this, and in like, and I get so angry. You, to me, I know none of us consider ourselves knowledge keepers in any capacity, but ironically, we're the next generation. So they're just
Mhm.
trying to exploit and extract that information. And even on this podcast, like, I'm really careful not to talk about teachings, because there's some person in Germany that's going to be like, oh my God, I'm going to run a
Mhm.
powwow and I'm going to do this. And it's like, no, 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 no. You're not getting that from here. The only thing you're getting on my podcast is why you're a colonial racist who exploits our people and how you have a responsibility to stop it. And yet here these guys are like, yeah, no, I just totally want all of your knowledge about elder protocol.
Mhm. Oh yes. Well,
Yeah.
largely what we do too is like because we work with organizations. So in the city, like we work with Amazon and ACO and South Center and these very large scale non-indigenous organizations, and we're making sure that we're putting those in place and we're letting them know how that works as well. But we're only giving so much of that information away. That's why, as us as authentically indigenous being hired as these curators, we're making sure our elders, our dancers, our performers, anybody that we bring in, they're gifted appropriately, they're paid appropriately, and it's when it happens. We get paid way after the fact. Sometimes we still haven't gotten paid for certain things, but it's
Yeah.
like we're making sure that those people that we brought in that are bringing in that knowledge, that bringing in our traditions, they're being honored appropriately and on time, because those are
Yeah.
really, really important. And a lot of non-indigenous people just don't know about it, and but that's a part of us being authentic. Bringing in these things and then having these organizations that are trying to pry that information out of us so that they can look cool and know things compared to it being an honorable way of doing things, right? It's huge. It's huge. So
Yeah. Well, and then I was just going to say, but we with working with them too, and leading up to it, that's part of us making sure and saying like, do you have this honorarium for these people? And they're
Mhm.
like, oh, well, we don't. Well, and then you say, well, then there's no performance. There's
Yeah,
no else.
easy
If
as
you don't
that.
have it, no, you don't. They're not coming if you don't have it for them.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
just bottom line. And I think that's the thing, is that they're like, they think that they can get away with it. Like, oh, I didn't know. It wasn't my job. It was somebody else's invoice.
Mhm.
Oh, we'll
Too
get back
bad.
to you in a couple days. But if it was you and any other organization, they all know their processes. They know their
Oh yeah.
timelines. And so, again, it's putting people in check and making them realize that these same little hoops that exist, that they're trying to make us jump through, that they have to jump through first to access the services that we're trying to give them. And if they can't do that, bottom line, that's just not how it works. So
Mhm.
again, it's just making sure that it stops at the beginning. And so, I would talk to the person who's running the human rights organization and say, look, if you can't properly, compensate our elders in a timely fashion, then we can't work with you. And that is the hardest thing, because then they're like, oh shit, well, who are we going to work with now? And then they're
Mhm.
scrambling, and then they're really having to scramble. So again, it's just, it's putting that scare and that fear in them and saying, oh, you think you're doing good reconciliation work, but you're really not. And this is the other
Mhm.
part that you have to do.
Yeah.
And
Putting
so,
people in their place.
yeah. And bottom line is, like, you want us to adhere to your policies, then you make sure that you're adhering for us. So
Yeah, no, and I'm really glad that we have like that we're standing up to it, because it's just not okay anymore. And I don't know. I know our elders beforehand have always advocated for us and have always tried to do the right thing. And I appreciate all of that work. And I feel like we as the next generation have to really be staunch on this and not dishonor that past, because this can't continue. We can't claim reconciliation and then not see these stupid companies not even implement one of the calls to action that's specific to freaking business. And there's lots now of calls to justice for them to implement. And if they don't even know what I'm talking about, what's on drip, they don't know what I'm talking about. That's not okay. We're past this, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can point to a certain mayor that existed for a number of years who could not take the time to learn how to pronounce his given name, and it was like an ongoing joke. Ha ha ha, I can't say this name. I mean, that is so distasteful and so disrespectful to not only the whole community, but to the elder, and to take that time. It's just a little bit of time. Somebody could even record it and you could listen to it over and over again and you could hear how to say your name, because it's not that hard. And it's like any other foreign name. You would expect people to be able to take the time to learn and pronounce respectively of anybody's names. And it's just the same thing. So organizations need to take that time and pony up the bucks, and if they have the capacity and they have the dollars to pay people. And, as far as honorariums go, I'm a big as whatever you're paying your highest professional to come in and speak is the same thing that you should be paying our elders. Our knowledge, the same thing. And so that's been what we've been demanding. And, at first it was like, can we do this?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we deserve this. They deserve that. And so making sure that they're, receiving compensation at an equitable level is really important. So
funny enough, I haven't found the paperwork for Beaufort Towers for all of the so-called permission that they gave to put up Beaufort Towers. That one that a person who's a non-Indigenous person made over $1 million from New York. And he put up basically appropriated burial site on the west side of town.
Where COP is?
Every time I go by there, it gets the middle finger, man. Every time.
But it's still there too.
Still there.
It's like, oh, it's infuriating.
So I was running municipally when that thing went up, and I was like trying to call them out. And ironically, my voice was not even slightly heard by anybody. I couldn't believe it. And to this day, so it's been since 2017. I'm like, this needs to come down. This needs to come down. And you know what? This younger generation, they're so bold. It's just a matter of time until they do something on that and just showcase everybody how wrong it is. And like I've said to the city, put like a wire mesh around it, something so that it doesn't actually look like a burial site. And they just conveniently never hear that. How convenient. So welcome to Calgary. Here's a burial site that's appropriated.
This is what we think of our people here.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So
now I know that
they go ahead.
Tried to do a bit of like policy change around, First Nations art for the city and whatnot. But again, I think there still is a lot of work to do. I mean, just real quick, talking about Bump and the mural work that they do, like really like beautiful work as well. But initially in the beginning, it was the large artwork that's created of the Cree dancer. It's beautiful.
The huge one.
Huge dancer on 4th Street. It's created by a white person. And yeah, it's created by a white person.
Of a Cree artist.
And it's about a Cree artist,
I actually got in a fight
in our territory at the time, but she's not from here, and there's so many beautiful fancy dancers that are from here that could have been represented. And I wrote to Bump initially and said, this is wrong. You guys need to acknowledge the First Nations people that live here and honor them in their territory, and it's great to see that they've opened that platform now and there's more artists that participate from the different nations. But again, initially, they didn't have that. They didn't look at that. They didn't see the importance of that or that understanding. And so again, there's people that are still appropriating art and creating these large pieces and getting compensation for it.
I'm so glad you said that. I've had how many fights on Twitter since I've been on Twitter with leading non-Indigenous artists that are in charge of the entire, arts of Calgary. And they get so offended because like this one lady was like, oh my God, this is the most beautiful picture I've ever seen. And it was a white artist who, depicted some native somewhere. And they were like so offended that I was like, yeah, I'm not impressed at all. And, expected me to give that teaching just so that they could be angry, just so that they could unfollow me, just be nasty, and then try to lay the groundwork in the non-Indigenous community about how shitty of a person I am. And it's like, why? Because I'm willing to tell you the truth and you're so offended by the truth. Like, when do we get our platform to be able to tell the truth? And it was like, I just had these things constantly happening that's like, I'm going to have a podcast because there's no medium for us to have these authentic conversations. And Twitter, there's only like a sentence or two, and then there's no real dialogue, right? So and that's still the norm here, and I can't understand why people think that's okay for me to, like, if it, like, let's just reverse it for 5 seconds. As Indigenous people, we just create all of these sculptures and such that are of, I don't know, John A. MacDonald or something. Like, we would never do that for a billion reasons, mainly because they're genocidal maniacs, but two, also because, like, why would we want to honor somebody that we don't know, that we don't have any, like, we have our culture that we're trying to reclaim. Like, they just don't get oppression dynamics at all here in the city. So I just am really glad you talked about that, because I've seen it over and over again. And ironically, I like to think I pay attention to every post you put, and yet I miss that. That I know which one you're talking about. It's a beautiful, but you couldn't even give an Indigenous artist that money. Thanks a lot, Sid.
Yeah, that was one of the original bump murals.
Very first one, like big ones too. I mean, there was like little tiny ones before, like artists were only giving very small spaces. So there's the one that's new. It's like the world's largest mural or something like that on the side of a building, and it's from a Tsuut'ina artist. So it's like he's local. It took him like weeks to do, scaffolding like crazy. It's super huge and it's beautiful. Like you can see it when you're on the Stampede side, like of McLeod Trail, and it's gorgeous. But it's like it's taken so long, like how many years since the first one was done, to get little spaces near like a door. Because for a while it was just like doors or those electrical boxes were the only things that Indigenous people were given. So it was like kind of nonchalant. We're giving you space. Here you go. Kind of shut up. So now there's like the bigger murals that are everywhere. Nathan McGuinness has his large one down there as well. And like a lot of really, really beautiful ones are coming out. And they're showing the real authenticity of artists, their background, their heritage, their lineage, and all that stuff. So it's beautiful to see now. But again, if you don't speak up, people don't know about it. So it just continues. Right.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping, doing what we do, if we speak up enough people will listen, that people will help us do something about it.
In 2017, when I ran, I was talking about Aaron Paquette because we ran together and he won, obviously. And he was the one who talked about a new policy under UNDRIP, so that all funds for arts went to Indigenous artists first. And that was the model I wanted to use in order to institute here in Calgary, because all of this insanity I can't believe it still continues. I can't believe it, but here we are. So I'm hoping that we can, and I've said this to policymakers repeatedly on Twitter, on interviews, everything, like just recreate that. Like, I just have so naively thought that if you tell policymakers XYZ, they'll do it, but they don't, because it's still colonial control, right? It sucks.
Yeah.
So anyway, if any way I could assist you in that, I would, that's for sure. So yeah. So are you taking off here, Melrene? Are you gonna go I don't know, somewhere, Paris?
Going to Paris, France at the end of September. So I'm super excited. I'm working on a collection right now. Lots of really cool large scale stuff. So it's my couture collection. So it's not wearable, but it's still beautiful wearable art. So I'm super, super excited. I'll be the first Blackfoot Indigenous artist to do this runway, and I'm super stoked to do it. And I did New York Fashion Week last year, and so taking our indigeneity international and really showing that we're beads and feathers, but we're still way more than beads and feathers. So really showcasing our real workability.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
And what's the name of the fashion show?
The fashion show or the organization, the International Indigenous Fashion Week. So they're an organization that's out of Saskatoon. With the founder, her name is Chelsea, and she's been doing it for the last couple of years, taking Indigenous artists to New York and Paris and all over Canada, and having some large scale events here. And this will be the 3rd year in Paris, so I'm excited to be a part of that. Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. I don't know. To me, this is the type of stuff I live for, because you guys, we all grew up, we didn't have any of this representation. Our kids, though,
Oh yeah.
they get to see all of this, and that makes me so happy. So, like Reservation Dogs, it's like I wish we had access to season 2, and I kind of hate all the memes that are on, social media, but I still live for them. So. Well, thank you both for coming on this show. I so appreciate it. I know that you're, on a hill in Pekani somewhere there, Autumn. So thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see the windmills in the background. So.
I was just there for their rodeo, and oh my God, I was gonna melt. I keep telling. Oh, I should tell you both, because I'm Satudene, right? I'm like north of Yellowknife. I'm just freaking melting in this heat. I'm like, I'm not a Plains Indian. I don't know how they do 4 days fasting and no water, and I can barely breathe. So yeah,
yes.
It's been great. Well, thank you both for coming on, and you're both welcome to come back anytime. And while you're out in Paris, I hope we're going to be thinking of you and praying for you, and knowing that you're going to be amazing.
Thank you.
That's for sure.
And before we wrap up, we are planning our next annual Authentically Indigenous Market. It will be beginning of December, so posters and events and dates and stuff will be out soon.
Right on. And then I will pay you full price to be there, and I am going to get myself a real banner, and I'm going to be real.
I love these goals. I love these goals.
Yes.
I know it's so silly. It's just that it's one of those things that I never knew how serious to take myself. And I just found Jesse Wente, he was just on my book club, and he's so great at being like, we all deserve narrative sovereignty. And I'm like, that's it. That's what I am. I'm being open and honest from my point of view about what I see, about the everyday racism that everybody's so cool with, like, white people depicting us in their, legendary and artistic way. And it's like, thanks for, objectifying us. Like, stop doing this.
Perpetuating trauma porn. That's what I call it. Most Indigenous movies are just trauma porn, that they're playing off of what's happened in the past and just staying in there, and we need to get out of that, stop it. We're so much more than that. We're more than the beads and feathers, and I think everything that we're proving through what you're doing on the podcast and what my sister's doing with her amazing fashion work, it just goes to show just how innovative and how creative and just amazing all of our Indigenous people are. So
100%. Oh, and all of the work you do every single day, Autumn. I hope you're a huge inspiration for folks like me, and welcoming and loving, and just we got to change this so that our kids are safe. Yeah. Oh, and I don't know if you both know, but Clarence Louis is going to be on my book club in October 10th.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He doesn't pull a punch, man, and he's not all about creating safe space for nobody. So even us women.
I have something about that. I was like, well, I guess if you didn't have the Indian Act, it's such a huge barrier to create the success of your nation. Just wondering. Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm really
he doesn't
curious.
have the same kind of barriers that exist
Right?
for people everywhere else. And so him to look down from the fence, well, he's very small. So for him to stand up on a platform and look down on the fence.
Get off that soapbox.
It says a lot. And ask him about his incarceration system. I want to know about that. Like, how do you feel about profiteering off of the incarceration of our people?
Yeah, no, I'm really curious to see how that's going to go, because like I want to give them a platform. So my dad gave me this book, so I'm like, okay, well I got to read it. And then he's like, no, I'll come on, but I'm not all about creating safe space. I'm just going to tell it like it is. I'm like, okay, this ought to be interesting, because it's all like, retired white women that are on my pod or in my book club that are like, they'll listen, and then there's going to be me and like Kathy Bear who are like, oh really, oh really. So I was hoping a few men would be interested in actually joining this one, because it would be interesting to see what they say, and hopefully men that care about Indigenous women's lives. But there's still we'll see who comes and see how it goes, and maybe, I don't know, we'll go from there. But then I had Bruce McIver on, and I gotta get off my butt and ask some other folks to come. I asked Clayton if he would come to talk about his book, but he doesn't follow me back, so boo. So I don't know if he'll see it.
I don't know if you've had Leroy Wolfcaller on there, if you had him or read his book. He does a thing on traditional governments from when he was chief of Siksika. So he's got a good book out that you can read. It's a short read too. It's a fast read, but he would be a really good person to have.
Oh, he'd be great. I got to get Brandy Moore in too, because she has a book that's doing really well. And I haven't even seen it yet, but I haven't gone to bookstores, to be fair. So I'm hoping that I can get that for Christmas from somebody, and then we can have her do it. And even if I don't get it for Christmas, I still want to do the book because she's more local,
Yeah.
So that'd be good. Yeah. So, okay, folks. Well, thanks for being on my show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for creating the space for us to just talk.
Well, you guys have been nothing but loving to me. And I should also say my favorite earrings ever that I ever got were custom made from Melrene. She had done my Princess Leia ones. And then I seen a woman who was houseless, and she really, really liked them. So I gave them to her. And to this day, I'm like, you're supposed to give them away. You're supposed to give them away. But I still miss them. And I should probably get Yoda ones, or some baby goat, baby Yoda. I should get those done. I don't know. But now I'm all obsessed about Prey.
I could do it. Oh yes.
I'm so obsessed about Prey. Obsessed. It's so good. I love it. So that makes me happy. Okay, I better do my ending here.
I love it, except for this part. So I'll just say there's this part.
Yeah. Okay. There's one thing about Prey that really upsets me, and it's what Taylor McNally's been talking about, actually. So Taylor McNally's a local Black activist, and it turned out that the Comanche way of pulling a bow and arrow is actually they do 3 arrows at one time. Like, that's authentically Comanche, apparently. So we should have got a Comanche like person who knows how to do that. That's the only like thing I've been seeing that's really negative about it. Other than too, it was shot obviously not in Comanche territory, but I was really happy to see our area here showcased so well.
Well, I'll say one thing that hasn't really been talked about, and I know it's a little kind of thing, but I mean, I really love the idea that we didn't have white saviors come at the end, to save it, but the idea that the characters in themselves, the development of the characters, the cast choice is really important, and the portrayal of it and such like this, and of the Comanche people, and that it's this platform, but choosing stars again that fit this Hollywood mode of how Indigenous people are supposed to look and their representation. And then, unfortunately, whitewashing them and white casting them and putting in leads that are more fair or have more white features. I'm not saying that they're not talented, but both of them are half white, the brother and the sister that are the stars. And so, I mean, that says something again about Hollywood's portrayal and about their acceptance about what we are as Indigenous people. And it's either in the movie, you either look partially white features, or you look like the crooked native and you have like the horrible features, because I've seen casting directors go both sides. And so again, it's like that white lens choosing for us what is appropriate as Indigenous people and that representation on the bigger screen. And
I really
so,
enjoyed Michelle Thrush, that she was nice and dark and like in
yeah,
her beautiful self. I was like, she's so nice
yeah,
and tan. And I love that that was that representation of the mother, but she wasn't like old and like crazy grandmother. She was the mother, still young and beautiful and dark and wearing everything and really talked about medicines. And I really
yeah,
enjoyed Michelle's character. It wasn't, I think that her character, it would have been nice to have her character do more and show more,
or,
especially
yeah,
because they're talking about herbs and different ways of using medicines. It would have been really cool to see more in depth into that. I think was really nice because, like you say, a lot of them were fairly fair, and it was really nice to see that one of the main characters wasn't super fair, and she's still beautiful, which is like, let's show that we are so many colors and variations, and we're all so beautiful in different ways, and like it needs to be shown more, and that we're not either like so dark, we're not just so light, we're all these colors in between, and even in one tribe we're all many variations, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's actually been a criticism I've read on Twitter about reservation dogs, because apparently the area that they claim that they're shooting in has a lot of folks that are Black, like
Yes.
Indigenous and Black, like yourself. And yet they're not showcased at all in reservation dogs. Like it's like taking, like Edmonton and just casting
Yeah.
all the creeps.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I do get what you're saying, and I hope, like, I thought maybe for season 2 for reservation dogs that maybe they'd have some more, Indigenous Black representation for that reason.
There's one auntie.
One auntie. Yeah, no, we need more of that. We need more because yeah, no, I try to acknowledge my privilege as a half white person, because why am I getting indoors? Because my name is Michelle Robinson, right? and I know people, they still don't get how bad the bias is. And just to give an example to you both, like when I'm in Stampede and I'm walking in an orange shirt showing any Indigenous earrings, anything, you don't even get eye contact from white people. The moment you're not showing and representing anything Indigenous, you get highs, hellos, even nods, conversations. It's like it's so painfully obvious. But for non-Indigenous, they're like, what race is them?
mm,
And I mean, Michelle Thrush, you can't take that off. You can't take that off. That's not, and it shouldn't be that way. And I tell people that, and they don't get it. But I think that's why I got my Indigenous tattoos on my arm, because I didn't realize how colonized I was by just always trying to hide my tattoos. So anyway, so they're loud and proud, and I have a lot of respect for folks who get their face tattooed for that reason, because you can't hide that either, rightfully so. And if I ever find the right tattoo Dene tattoos for my face, you're damn right I'm gonna get it done. Anyway,
as long as they're traditional to your culture.
exactly. I'm not going to appropriate from the Inuit. Holy, that's no, and that's become a thing where people are doing that. I talked to Christy Belcourt about that, and I won't say this on the podcast, but she basically, said to try to do certain things in order to have it come to you. And I've just come to the conclusion it wasn't meant to come to me yet, and when it is, it will, if it does. And that's kind of just it. So yeah, I don't want to appropriate somebody else's culture. There's over 700 nations of us. Why would I do that?
Yeah, exactly. Gotta honor your own. And in no way Blackfoot do facial tattoos. So I know that for sure. Yeah.
Really? Hey?
we will not be getting any facially tattoos.
There was a lot of, we did paint for sure, but nothing was permanent. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, actually, I have a face painting ceremony coming up. I'm pretty excited about it. So, and I've seen that there's this really, there's a tattoo artist, and he's been doing basically the markings I see around the teepees on his arms and things like that, and doing it for others. And I was like, but that's for real. Like, if I knew my family colors and stuff like that, I'd get it done in a second. But anyway, that's another conversation for another day. Thank you guys for coming on my show.
Thanks, Michelle.
I know, we can just keep talking and talking.
I know, hey? I know, but I so rarely get to. And that's why I love it. So I just hope I wish we could hang out more. I know the stupid COVID made it even worse. And I try to, since my come back to Calgary with our tail between our legs, we've been doing the full moon ceremonies in our backyard. So if you ever want to come, you're more than welcome to. But again, it's more for that urban Indigenous crowd who, there's so many of our people who can't have a fire in their backyard because of rent and all of these other things, right? So I just open that up to anybody who, I don't know, if they burn their hair or they need to let go of something that needs to go in a sacred fire, or just want to sit around fire and have potluck, whatever. So anyway, I miss you both, and I can't wait to see you again, and I can't wait to promote the December one. And now I have a goal to work for, get my banner, get you paid, and be a part of that. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm proud that this podcast has given solutions and included cultural safety training or cultural first aid in all of them to create a safer space for Indigenous, people of color, those with disabilities, and LGBTQ2+ to speak. HereToHelp.bc.ca has a great piece on what is Indigenous cultural safety, why I should care about it. And I want to say thank you to authors Cheryl Ward, Chelsea Branch, and Alicia Fritkin for creating those action tools that, at this point, well, I don't know how non-Indigenous don't know how to be able to advocate properly for their part in reconciliation and settler understandings. I'm just lucky enough to highlight and repeat them here. Internalized racism or lateral violence is another form of violence Indigenous and marginalized folks experience because of the structure of racism imposed on these lands. You can go to What is Internalized Racism by Donna Bevins. She has so many resources on racialequitytools.org. Do's and Don'ts for Bystander Intervention by American Friends Service Committee. So if you are seeing somebody being yelled at on the C train and it's clearly an oppression dynamic, you can go to afsc.org and go to Do's and Don'ts for Bystander Intervention to try to intervene in a positive way without calling the police. If you're in Alberta and you see or experience racism, you can report it at acttoendracism.ca or text at 587-507-3838. Lots of white pride stickers going up all over, so please make sure you're reporting those so that we have some sort of way to track that. Indigenous have been talking about our issues, sharing our traumas in reports, commissions, and public hearings, just so it can be regularly disregarded. No more. Honor our words. Honor the treaties. Listen to politicians and their policies and platforms. If they don't recognize the marginalized in their budget with gender equity plus, if they are cutting violence prevention programs, services, Indigenous education, uterus health choices, going after gay straight alliances, have a lack of human rights for migrants, immigrants, folks with disabilities, know that your vote for that party or person is directly negatively impacting marginalized people. Demand that they implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action, the recommendations of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, the multiple reports about child welfare reform and violence prevention, and now 231 calls to justice from the National Inquiry on MMIW G2. Denying these reports is a form of abuse called gaslighting. Our people are experiencing extreme racism in the justice, education, and health institutions, with multiple reports that say the same thing. Demand change from election platforms and politicians. If they don't understand colonialism, racism, privilege, sexism, they have literally zero business running. This should be understood by all parties, local politicians, community associations. Holy cow, I just told that story. Sports clubs, etc. Really great article I said out loud was Truth Before Truth, how non-Indigenous Canadians become allies. Literally, since I said that in episode 62 to today, there are numerous Google's searches if you say how to become an ally to Indigenous people. Like it's just willful at this point, folks. If you're experiencing emotional distress after anything we talked about today and want to talk, you can call the First Nation and Inuit Hope for Wellness helpline at 1-855-242-3310. It is toll-free and open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can also text at hopeforwellness.ca. If more related to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, you can call 844-413-6649. Also, if you're non-Indigenous, there are distress center lines in your area, usually a functioning 211, or you can call 833-456-4566. 60 Scoop Indigenous Society of Alberta is ssisa.ca. And there are LGBTQ2 plus crisis supports that you can go to. Thank you to the Trevor Project. You can go to lifevoice.ca and you can find the Trans Lifeline at 877-330-6366. And for LGBTQ2 plus youth, 866-844-7386. And I should also mention that our Pride is coming up here on September 4th. And if you're a youth, there's an organization called YouSay, and NDP Liberals, we're all going to have floats. And yeah, I just really encourage you to come march with us and support LGBTQ2 plus, because their rights are under attack, and that's not okay. Also, we're experiencing overdose crisis. There's two apps that you can download. One is called Brave, and the other is DORS. And you can also call the National Overdose Response Service at 888-688-NORS. Please do not use alone. If you are, please use that number or those apps. And if you are a status First Nation in Alberta, you have access to a Narcan a day. Just talk to your pharmacist about it. I do that, and I try to donate as many as I can to Bear Clan, but I also give them freely to folks who are asking for money whenever you stop your vehicle or if you're on the C-train station. These are places that I give mine out. And in fact, I give out 7 a week, but I still have to get naloxone kits. Every single Albertan has access to a naloxone kit. All you have to do is go to your local pharmacist and grab it, and please give them out freely to folks who are needing them, because it is actually hard for them to access these things. Violence is my everyday reality. Every Indigenous generation has faced it. This is self-care, how I take my power back. That's why I started this podcast, to speak freely, without interruption, tone police, leadership shaming, gaslighting questions, as many people don't want to hear Indigenous opinion, but sure want to tell us theirs, even though they know nothing about the oppression dynamics or constant surveillance of our people. I and many others share tons of info on microaggressions, so it's just unacceptable to say them anymore. Learn about being trauma informed. Folks like me are dealing with internalized racism and gatekeeping, so there's so many things that people can do for reconciliation. Internal and external racism is an everyday reality for me and folks with disabilities, LGBTQ2+, QT BIPOC, and others. Masi Cho to my ancestors. Thank you to my granny and my mom for what strength looks like through your example. I don't have to go through half the stress they've ever went through. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be strong and blunt, even though it pisses off everybody. My stepmom for showing me what a proud culture is through her Austrian family and roots, and teaching me to be a proud Calgarian. Just through her, I'm a second-generation Calgarian. Thank you to Darcy, Big Buffalo Rock Man, for producing, editing the show, and being my husband, childhood friend, father of our child, and my support down this journey of the Red Road. He has witnessed decades of racism and sexism and injustice. And to our child, Thunderpipe Necklace Woman, we are blessed to learn from you daily, and we are honored you chose us. You give me daily accountability to be a better and stronger person. And I just hope my family will be proud in the future of us trying to discuss these present day issues. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. To those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. I also have a YouTube channel. You can go and subscribe, or you can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcast. And then if you go on my social media, it's usually a pinned post. And I'll end with giving side eye to those Calgary rabbits. You're lucky I'm not tradish. My beautiful cousin once responded, "Or you'd be in my dish." Thanks for listening, folks.